Welcome, everyone, to Rising Out of the Chrysalis with Marisa Grace, where we share life stories of struggle and triumph, not only of my own life experiences, but also through the experiences of my guests as a way to help you have breakthroughs and find hope in your own life. I'm Marisa Grace, and today I have a special guest, Jacqueline, who has an amazing, inspiring story to share with us. So welcome, Jacqueline. So happy to have you here.
I am so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So Jacqueline, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and tell us about, your story, how you came about to do what you're doing now, as part of your life purpose.
I would love to. My story began. Well, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to tell you about myself. I'm a master relationship coach. I've been doing it for over 40 years. I'm also an alignment life coach where I help women in the arena of depression, hopelessness, wanting a different way, wanting to figure out their purpose in life. And it's just such an exciting place for me to be. In addition, I'm an international speaker, a licensed ordained minister, and my life is to be a difference maker and to simply serve others.
That's so wonderful.
Let's
So
start
tell
with
us, yes, tell me how you all started, how you
let's
came
start
to
with
be
my
doing this.
story.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, when I was a child, for as long as I could remember, I was raised in a dichotomy of a very mentally ill mother and a father who was a pastor. My life started as long as I can remember. What I remembered was my mother's mantra for me, and it was simply, Jacqueline, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, and no one is ever going to love you. And that's what I believed until the age of around 20. And in desperation, I cried out to God. I was so desperate. If this is all there is, I can't live anymore. I'm miserable. And I really didn't want to live. Well, at that moment, God heard my cry and he answered. And he began to minister to me through his word and through other ministers about the love that he has for us and how it's never ending. It's always there. All we need to do is receive it. So it took me a while. By then I was in my 20s, I was married, had 2 children, and was on the journey of really discovering who the real me was, because I felt like I had no value. So what began to happen is, as I learned about love, I also had to learn about forgiveness. And God began to show me in my life how unforgiving I was. And he was right. I was filled with it. Well, I wanted to discover more about I guess I would say the unforgiveness. I had no choice. This was a one-way journey. There was no looking back. And so I began to read about unforgiveness, all the hopelessness, all the horrors that were there. And I began to discover I indeed had a lot of unforgiveness, just from my childhood, from other things that happened in my life with grown women. I'd become very afraid of women. I'd become very afraid that they would destroy me, but there was a different way. And as I went through life, and as I went through the study of forgiveness, I learned something, the most valuable thing I've ever learned. And it simply is my definition of unforgiveness is honestly drinking poison, hoping the other person will die. And guess what? They never do. They're always there. And
That's a
so,
very good way of putting it. What a wonderful analogy to put that. That is so, yeah, that is a very true statement. And so many people will hold on to that grudge, right? Or that hurt that they just don't understand that really what they're holding on is themselves, the hurt of themselves.
you're so right. You're
Yeah.
so right. And in addition to that, as I looked at that definition, I knew I had no choice but again to move forward with my healing. So I began, and it was never an easy journey. I was so filled with hate for others, hate for myself. It's like, how could I be such a failure at 20 something? And so as I began the journey, I truly had to do an entire inventory into my heart and into my being. And I realized the reason I wouldn't let go of unforgiveness is I didn't want them to forget it. I didn't want to forget it. I wanted to remember. I wanted revenge.
Well, that's the thing, right? And we think that if we hold on to
Yeah.
the memory, if we hold on to that hurt, that you're gonna get revenge out of it.
You're so right.
But
And what
it's such a
happened,
false statement, isn't it?
it is. It is. But you know what? The truth sets us free.
Mm-hmm.
It always sets us free. So I started the journey of forgiveness. And I want you to understand something. Forgiveness is not saying it was okay. It's not forgetting.
That's right.
It is simply forgiving. And it's a whole different animal, as we probably all know. So as I started and continued my journey, I really had to make a choice every day. God, teach me to forgive. Teach me to let go of that poison that was killing me. I was suicidal. I was not going to make it without an intervention, an extreme intervention. So as I walked through my process of forgiveness, and it's not for the faint of heart, of unforgiveness, sorry, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not something you wake up and say, today I'm going to forgive.
No, it's not. It's a process.
It
And
is a
it's
process.
really about forgiving yourself.
It all is about forgiving myself. I had to forgive myself that as a child, I became immersed in that. Not that it was my fault. It wasn't in any way my fault. However, I had to forgive myself of all the anger and disappointment and hurt. Everywhere I turned, there was pain in my life. I had two best friends when I was little. And I would go over and have soda with them, and it was just a wonderful time. I loved them to death. And one day they began to tell me a story about Claire. And I thought, wow, she sounds like a really bitch because she was horrible. She was fat, she was ugly, she was stupid, And I thought, I'm glad I don't know her. And they both turned to me and said, Jacqueline, you're her.
Oh, wow.
You're her. And I sat and I swallowed my Coke that day. And I began to cry. And do you know what I said to them? I asked them, does that mean you're not going to play with me anymore? Does that mean we're not friends? And they burst into laughter. And of course, that incident was over, but I never forgot it. So you can understand my disdain, for women in
Well, yeah,
general.
the hurt, as children, when we encountered these episodes, it's so profound, the wounds, it gets so embedded in us that
It does.
it takes, it sucks the life out of us, I should say,
It
and
does.
every meaning of what life is all about, our self-love, self-worth, any value that we are supposed to hold on to as a human being just dissipates.
You are so right.
And I can relate to what you're saying right now. I didn't experience the same thing you experienced, but what I experienced was sexual abuse as a
Yeah.
child. And the experience is very similar to what you're describing.
It's the same.
Yeah, it's the same.
Devastation. Your life is ruined.
Yes. And even though I wasn't called fat or stupid, I felt like my body was not worthy. I wasn't worthy as a person. My body was ugly and distorted. There was something wrong with me.
Right.
And, I think for all of us that go through these very deep traumatic events, that really takes away, it's almost like they suck the life out of your soul. So anything that you could hold on to, as a purpose of living, just disappears, and you feel like there's nothing left to hold on to.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly how we feel. And I'm not the only one. You can say, oh, well, I didn't go through that trauma. We've all been through trauma.
Yes.
Whether we recognize it, whether we deny it, we have all been through trauma in our life. And I want to tell you something really clear. You don't have to stay there.
No, you don't. And the wonderful thing, that you're bringing out is that once you realize, you find that truth.
Yeah.
And for all of us, that might be a different path that we're going to take.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're all different, and our traumas are going to be different. Our experiences are going to be different, but our feelings is what brings us together. The emotional, roller coaster that we go through is what brings us together to share like these stories and to say, you know what, you can get out of that. There's a way out. And you can
didn't
do
you
it.
find, oh, I'm sorry,
It's
didn't
okay.
you find that talking about it helped?
Yes.
Being with like-minded women.
Oh, absolutely. And even now, the more I talk about it, it's it's a continuous healing process, right? You don't just heal overnight.
No,
It's a continuous process.
it absolutely is. But healing is there for
Yes.
all of us. I'm a firm believer in what you feel, you can heal. And with God, the universe, whatever your perception of your higher being is, it's all the same. We all, have that belief in something usually beyond ourselves. And I am just honored to be here with you today. I hope you hear the joy in conquering that unforgiveness. And also throughout my life, God brought me many incredible mentors in my life. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Denny Wastley. They all were powerful men that had a powerful impact on my life. And I pursued my master's in marriage, family, child therapy. And I thought, I want a different life for my family. So guess what? I came up with my own mantra. And it was for my children. I wrote it on the fridge on a piece of paper. I wrote it on my fridge, and it simply is, if it concerns you, it concerns me. And that was during the time where, if your son fell down or your daughter, it's like, come on, brush it off, get
I
over it.
know. Yeah,
And that's so wrong.
it is.
What happened to them in that instant is the most important thing that's ever happened to them. And my son, I was at the door of my house one day and I saw my son run in and he hit a truck with his bicycle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope the truck isn't hurt. That's what instantly came to mind. And this loving couple came out and just picked my son up before I could get to him and just began to ask him, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm so sorry this has happened to you. And I really got in tune and remembered, if it concerns you and concerns me, it concerns me. And I began loving on him and telling him I was so sorry. He was going to be okay. And we were going to make it better. I had Band-Aids and medicine in the house, and it was going to be better. But it really paused me at first. Think about it. I was angry that he might have hurt that truck. That was the last thing on those couples' mind. As a matter of fact, they went out and bought him a car
Oh,
that,
wow.
a little toy car that he could play with while he was recovering from his little bruises. And that taught me so much about how much more I have to learn. We all do.
We all do. And, and it's so true. Sometimes we go back to this old programming that we have because of the way society has been brought up.
It is.
And we have these old habits that we pick up from, our parents, our grandparents, that, it's so embedded in us that we don't realize, that it's there. And then you catch it. Like you just caught that, what you said about the truck, and you're like, oh my God, but that wasn't you. It's, already in your programming.
Yeah.
From, your childhood, from your parents,
Yeah.
the way you were raised to think that way.
Uh-huh. But we can stop. We can stop. You can stop.
Yes.
I'm talking to your audience today. You can stop. Healing can come. I don't care if you're feeling hopeless, angry, disappointed, hurt. We've all been there. But I am promising you there's a way out, and it's to freedom. You don't have to live with all that garbage anymore. You can be free to live your purpose because all of us have a purpose.
That's right. What a wonderful message, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
And there's just so much love coming out of you through your story and your message. I can just feel it. I hope everybody can feel it, over the video, but you just have so much love to give. And tell me about this journey of yours of finding forgiveness. How hard was it for you to go through those steps?
It was very hard. First of all, I had to actually, and I didn't have anyone's help. So I had to actually write down about my unforgiveness. And then I pinpointed each one. Huge one was my mother. And as I began to pinpoint that, I began to learn that actually, as a child, she was abused. She was locked up in the closet. She was raped. She was all kinds of horrible things happened to her that I never knew. And it kind of humanized it for me. And it kind of helped me come up with a compassion for my mom that helped with the forgiveness, because hurt people hurt people.
Yes, that's right. Now, did you end up having like a conversation with her? Like, how did you come to find out about her hurt?
Well, I began to find out because my older sister, she had come for a visit, and we had a visit, a good visit about Mama. And, she could never understand why I was Mama's battering ram until one day she realized I looked just like Mama's mother.
Mm.
I acted just like her mother, and I'd never even met her. And so began the journey of me, first of all, realizing I had to forgive my mother. And as I walked through those steps of recognizing she's human too, she had a life too. And I needed to forgive her because of me so I could move on. But it also filled my heart with compassion for her in all that she had gone through. So that helped me immensely. But also, anytime, and understand when you say, I forgive you, I wrote out this long letter of my anger and unforgiveness first. Secondly, I wrote out another letter of how that was impacting me personally. Thirdly, I wrote out another letter that simply was speaking those things that are not as though they were, as far as I forgive you. I forgive you because. I forgive you because. And so it went on and on. And I walked through this for months. It wasn't an easy fix. And there was times when my anger would shoot up again. And I would stop and think about all the love there is in the world. Why focus on a place in time that had no more value for me?
That is wonderful. And the fact that you took, that process to really help you, that's
Mhm.
such a good way of, releasing, the hurt and the anger, just writing those letters. I
Mhm.
know for me, I knew at the age of 18, I had to forgive one of my one of the persons that had
Wow. Mhm.
hurt me, and it was a very difficult decision.
I bet.
But I knew I had to do it if I wanted to move on in life. I don't think I would have been here today if I hadn't taken that first step.
Wow.
And I did it for me out of survival. I wanted, if I was going to live and move on, I
Yeah.
needed to do that for myself. So that was like a release for me to continue on and battle on. And the other thing, that it took me a while, because I don't know if it was the same for you, was I wanted to know if, do they feel the hurt that I feel?
Yeah.
Do they feel the pain that I feel, that I'm going through, the pain, the suffering? How do I know they'll ever know the pain they've ever caused?
Was
And for me, that was like the answer that I was seeking to validate that, okay, I can move on if I know if that they understand the pain that I've gone through.
so many times they don't,
They don't,
and they never will.
and they never will.
That part of them is usually dead.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me if I ever confronted my mother. I tried to one time. And I went up to her, and, I was at her house, and we were home on leave from the military. And I began to tell her, Mama, I forgive you. I forgive you for everything that's ever happened between us. And she looked at me and she said, What is wrong with you? I did nothing to you. It's all in your mind. So, whatever problem you've got, don't bring it to me because I don't care.
No, because she was so consumed with her own problem that
Yeah.
she couldn't see beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens with people that end up hurting other people is they're just consumed with themselves, that they can't see beyond than their own little world that they're living in of pain.
Yes.
So, you know, hurting other people, it's like, no, I didn't hurt you. That didn't hurt because it's not hurting me. You know, that's the way they think. So it's very hard. And that's why it's important that we forgive, because we really are forgiving ourselves for holding on to
Exactly.
the hurt, because the longer you hold on to it, you're actually allowing the other person to continue to hurt you.
Drinking that poison.
Yeah, drinking that poison.
Drinking that poison. And that's something you'll always want to remember. It was the best definition I could ever come up with. Drinking poison, hoping they'll die.
Yeah.
And there were many days I hoped my mother would die. I'm glad she didn't, but it was the poison in me speaking out.
Yeah. And that poison was actually killing you inside.
It was totally. Yeah. It was
hoping that you would die on the inside, that pain would die.
And see,
this
I
is
was dying.
You were dying. And not only that, it was leading you and I had the same thoughts of taking our own lives.
Absolutely.
Because that poison is, you know, that's where it's going to take you. You know, in that direction, unless you change and you know, take a step to changing that around.
Yeah. And you can.
Yeah.
We want to give you hope tonight. You can turn it around. I know you can, because we did.
Yeah.
If we can, you can. In any way that I can, in any way, serve you in the process, I would be totally honored. You deserve healing.
And to live, you know, a purposeful life.
And to live free.
And to live, you know, have days of peace and love that you didn't get to have. You know, just because, you know, sometimes I would look back and I'm like, I missed a lot of my life because of my depression from, you know, all of the traumas I lived through. Yeah. But it's never too late to relive the moments the way you're supposed to, with, you know, love and fulfillment and enjoyment, at whatever age. So whatever age you're at, you could still make up that time.
Absolutely. Most of my clients are women that have gone through their menopause, they've gone through raising their children, they've gone through empty nest syndrome, and all of a sudden they're sitting there alone or with a partner that has no understanding, and they wonder, what are they going to do now? What are you going to do now? And you know what? You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Find that way. Talk to a pastor or, you know, wherever your line of belief is. Talk with them. I know it may be hard, but find someone you can talk to.
Someone that can relate to your pain is the best advice I would give, because not everybody is suitable to listen.
Yes. And to guide you.
Yes.
Where you need to go. And you know what? It's kind of like, did you ever see the movie Braveheart?
Yes.
Remember at the end when he screamed out freedom? That's what it felt like. That's what it felt like for me. Freedom.
And that's what it is. It's not only freedom. What I found is an immense self-love, learning to love myself like nobody ever will. And we get caught up because of our traumas that, you know, the outside world is going to give us that. And, growing up, I was always waiting for that miracle. I thought, I'm going to be like Cinderella. Somebody's going to come along and rescue me and, you know, build up my heart, and everything. But that's not the case. You are your own shining armor that's going to come on the horse and rescue you is you, nobody else. It's not going to be a partner. It's not going to be, some fairy. It's you.
You
And
are so wise.
when you can get to that point where you can find that self-love and expend that love from the inside,
Yes.
it's a wonderful thing. Like there's nothing in this world that you cannot, get through once you find that self-love,
So,
that, it just gives you so much power, so much freedom.
and it
And
gives you love.
yes.
It gives you love. The more we forgive, the more love we contain within us, no matter what's going on in our lives. We become empowered to choose how the rest of our life is going to be. Maybe we didn't have a choice back then, and it might have been a divorce, it might have been whatever has hurt you. You can be set free, learn to love yourself. There's a saying that, to thine own self be true, but also love your neighbor as yourself. And you know what I missed in that entire thing? We're to love ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
We're to care for us first.
Yeah.
That helped me on my journey, although it was difficult.
Yes, 'cause sometimes we can't, we might go to church, whatever church you go to, you
That's
might
it.
hear the stories, you might hear the lecture, but the words don't really connect. They don't sink in. But the
Mm.
reality is everything starts with you. I was a very religious Catholic person,
Mhm.
and I realized that, after a while, I'm like, was waiting for a miracle, to be rescued out of the prison that I was in of this depression. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
where is God? Where are my angels? Where's my miracle? If there's miracles, where's the miracle? And the
Yeah.
voice inside of me always kept saying, you, but I didn't get it. And it took me a while to understand it, that, if I want to change, the
Right.
change had to start with me. I
Awesome.
had to make that first step.
Mhm.
I had to get out of that room. I had to get out of the house and go outside and get fresh air so I would feel a little bit better. I was the one that had to push myself
Yeah.
to go, let me go do this and
Mhm.
get out of my comfort zone and
Mhm.
see, can I accomplish this? And then once I did, I'm like, oh my God, if I can do this, what else can I do?
That's right.
And you'd be surprised what you're capable of once you face those fears and you go and do the things that you are most fearful of doing.
Exactly. In
Because those
that,
things, yeah, that it's going to give you freedom.
yes, and peace. There's not enough peace in the world. People are crying out for peace and not finding it anywhere because of the political junk going on, because of families breaking apart. So many reasons. But you know what? You deserve peace. I deserve peace. You deserve peace. And it's a good thing. It's a
And
good thing.
it's an awesome thing. And not only that, once you get to that place,
Yes.
you could be in a total peace in the middle of chaos.
Thank you.
So you could be living with the people that caused your hurt
Yeah.
and be at peace and
Yeah.
not be affected by their own, crazy dominion that they're causing on their own lives,
Yeah.
and not allow that
Huge.
to affect you at all. And that's the place where you want to be. You want to be in that place where you're no longer affected by your environment, by the people around you. And you can create that world for you of peace and love and not allow the outside to interfere.
If you want a miracle, look in the mirror, and it's your choice what you choose. You can choose freedom or bondage.
Mm-hmm.
It's all up to us.
Absolutely. And I know it's hard, when you're in that cage. I call it a cage because that's what it
That's
feels
a
like.
good name for it. Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to see outside of the cage because you feel like you're imprisoned and you can't get out. There's no way out. And we're in that state that we are, we feel like we're, in bondage, like you say. It's best to like find somebody,
Yes.
a healer, a coach, a therapist, someone that can
Someone.
to guide you through the process, because it's very hard to do it alone. It is the most difficult thing, to get through that journey all by
It took me,
yourself.
you're so right. It took me a long time. And unfortunately, my husband and my children, when they were smaller, they caught the wrath of it until I began to forgive. Game changer.
And you know, we can't blame ourselves either for
No, absolutely
not be,
not.
nobody's perfect.
Right.
We're never going to be perfect parents. Even if you think you're the perfect parent, your child is going to think you're the most horrible parent.
At times they will, but then you know what? There's those times, for instance, when I was looking to get on AOL and I was trying to find a name for myself and I couldn't figure it out. And my 15-year-old son came to me and said, Mama, you're all that.
I
That's
love
what your
that.
handle needs to be. You're all that.
That sounds like my daughter, she's a teen, doesn't let me to touch her phone, private phone. And then one day, um, she left her phone and I was trying to call her and I realized she left the phone home. And it's ringing. It said, "Best mom ever is calling." And I'm like, oh, here.
Beautiful.
I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna tell her I saw this because she might change the name.
It's never too late.
Because,
It's
when they're in your presence, they make you feel like you're the worst, mom out there.
sometimes they
Sometimes
have those times.
they do, but then you see those signs, you're like, okay, that makes me feel better. But the truth is, we can't stop, things from affecting our children. We
Yeah.
can't stop ourselves from acting sometimes because, it's our programming, the way we were raised. We have triggers. They're going to come out.
Always.
Are they going to get affected? We don't know how they're going to get affected. It's just part of being human. We will be affected no matter what by our environment. Different things are going to trigger us. And it's a process of learning how to get through those things that do affect us.
Absolutely.
And once we learn, that's the key. It's learning and having those tools going forward that we could even teach our kids, so they can get through whatever affected them as well in a much faster pace than the journey that we took.
Of course. And there are times where I've had to ask my children, please forgive me. I did not mean what I just said. I did not mean to spank you in anger. Real life stuff. We're all human.
We are.
And I just am thankful for the grace I've been allotted to receive forgiveness for myself.
And
And
that's
you know
such a
what?
wonderful thing.
Sorry.
It's okay.
One of the things my son said during one of the times I was just raking myself over the coals, please forgive me. He said, Mom, all that's gone. That is no longer a place in my heart. I love you, and I'm always going to love you. And
That's beautiful.
whatever was past was past. He was in his 20s when he said this to me, and it brought a deeper healing to my soul than I ever imagined. Because him acknowledging that, yeah, you were pretty different at times, but you know what? We got through those times unscathed. We got through them.
But the magical thing that I find is once we start healing ourselves,
Yes.
you're going to start noticing that the people around you start healing with you. They go on the journey with you. And that's the magical thing about it. Don't you find that, Jacqueline?
Yes. What begins to happen is during that forgiveness process, every time, every step we take towards the unforgiveness, what begins to happen is our ability to love ourselves and love others and see, yeah, you know, it's shit happens, excuse me, but it happens. And you know what? There's a better way. We don't have to be lost in that past, in that whatever it was, because today I'm totally free. I have forgiven my mother a long, many years ago before she died, and I learned not to expect her to be as gracious as my son and repent. Although it would be great if they did, it doesn't happen usually.
That's wonderful. Now, Jacqueline, tell us about, how are you helping your clients now find this love within them and their relationships?
I am above all blessed because what I didn't know as a little girl, the purpose for my life was to be a difference maker. As I went through my master's, as I began to learn, as Jim Rohn began to love on me and help me with coaching practices. In fact, I ended up being one of three of Jim Rohn's coaches in the world. And I was his relationship coach. And the amazing thing is I could see through the dross of the man, woman, or individual that I was coaching. I could see what they couldn't see within them. And it helped bring them to liberty. That's what it's about. Once you have an understanding of, oh, it's not all my fault. It's not my fault. And accept responsibility to move on. I have the privilege of touching women's lives every day, touching couples' lives every day, because my soulmate, Larry, and I are living out our almost 52 years together. We're living out our dream, what we prayed and hoped for when the kids were screaming Mimis and we didn't think we'd make it through another day. We're living that now. And I'm so grateful. When I help individuals look at what's missing in their life, and maybe you don't even know what's missing, you can find it.
That's so true. So, that's usually that's what it is. You don't know what's missing. You don't know that piece that, will bring you together. you know, to figure things out. And we get so caught up in our own emotions, you know, in our relationships that we usually put blinds on to be able to recognize what our partners are going through.
Exactly.
And we just, you know, think about me, and my needs and what I want, and not, you know, really look at the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so wise. You should be a coach.
I do coaching, but not in relationships. But yeah, it's, you know, and a lot of times what I find, working with clients that, you know, are having trouble, in their relationship, it's all about their own hurt, their, you know, their lack of self-love.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Yes.
And honestly, if people would just stop the noise, and truly treat their spouse as they want to be treated, learn their love language, learn your children and your grandchildren's love language. It's so important. It's so simple. And it can change their life because they will feel the hope you have for them. They will feel in tune that you care. Remember, if it concerns me, it concerns you.
What a beautiful message. Well, Jacqueline, what a pleasure to have you on my show. And I'll have a link for Jacqueline, how to contact her underneath our video. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Please don't forget to share, like the video, and subscribe so you know when these videos come out every week. And thank you, Jacqueline. Until next week, everyone. This is it for our show today.